Welcome to the Binge Eating to Food Freedom podcast for driven hearts and minds. If you pour your best self into everything you do, and yet food takes up so much energy that it pulls you away from what matters most, you're in the right place. I'm Katie Papo, and I'm here to help you create a healthy relationship with food that supports you to live your highest and best life. And for an extra edge, become a Food Freedom Insider. Each week, I'll give you free, practical wisdom you can actually use in your daily life and more. Just head to katiepapo.com/resources or check the show notes. Without further ado, let's dive into the episode.
Hello, everybody. Today we're talking about 2 simple exercises that transform how you show up in life. And I also wanted to talk about goal setting in a different light because, well, first of all, we're often setting goals throughout the year. But right now, if you're listening live, this is a very reflective time of year. We're approaching the very end of the year where people start to ask themselves, what patterns from my previous year are no longer serving me? What is the version of myself that I want to grow into next year? And I've found that there are certain depths of goal setting, and I myself have gone through a lot of these stages, and this will help you as you're entering into your new year. So I found that one of the first depths of goal setting is more shallow, where we just fling ourselves into whatever the trend is or whatever our friends are doing. And there's no real significance behind it for us personally, other than the result sounds nice. So it might be that a bunch of your friends are joining this weight loss program and the promise is to lose 10 pounds in 2 minutes, right? And so we sign up last minute, we're frenetically organizing the Tupperwares and the food scale and all of the things in order to prepare for the diet. And then we go into it and maybe we'll succeed in terms of following it to a T. Maybe we won't and we'll fall off the wagon. But either way, we just threw ourselves into it and there wasn't really a huge amount of depth behind it. Now, in the next kind of phase of goal setting, we might get more intentional. Some people set what's called SMART goals, ensuring that their goals are specific and measurable and actionable. But even this, we are still quite cerebral about the goal. We might set a goal that we think that we should have, and maybe we should, but it might not be quite aligned with where we're at energetically or emotionally. So we map it out with spreadsheets and create a whole system. I can tell you what I used to do, and here's a perfect example of me applying this in a New Year's Eve. I decided I wanted to set a goal of no binges for the whole year. And at that point, I really needed to succeed at this because I was binging every single day and it was really consuming my life. So I did have an emotional desire to get rid of the binge pattern. I knew that this was this dark cloud hanging over me and I was never really going to really meet the fullest version of myself until I got rid of this huge blockage. So I set this goal to go the whole year without a single binge. And in order to prepare, I created the most gorgeous spreadsheet that you've ever seen. And I outlined exactly what I was going to do every morning to start my day off strong, my meditation, my green smoothie, my run, all of these different things. I even had a list of all these alternatives that I could do instead of binge. So call a friend, take a shower, practice breathing, practice meditation, dance. I had this whole list of things to do that if I ever had a craving or an intense urge to binge or eat something outside of my prescribed foods that I prescribed myself, then I would be prepared. And I would just open my notebook, read this list, pick a thing, and then I'd overcome the craving. Now, it was New Year's Eve. My spreadsheet was complete. I was totally prepared. And I thought to myself, well, this is my very last chance for a binge. And how many of us, by the way, have thought that? This is my very last chance for a binge, because after that, no binges for an entire year. So I said, okay, what do I want to eat tonight as my last hurrah? So I decided I wanted to have cookies and ice cream. What else did I make? Who knows what else I made? But I ended up eating so much. And as I'm eating, I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 11:45. I only have 15 minutes left to eat anything that I want to eat, because starting at midnight, it's all over and I can never binge again. So by the time midnight came, I was so sick. I was doubled over in pain from eating so much. And then I looked at my spreadsheet, which said wake up at 5 a.m. I was like, there's no way I can wake up at 5 a.m. tomorrow. I feel horrible. I'm going to wake up with this heavy, full belly. So then I convinced myself, I said, you know what? Tomorrow will be like my getting ready day. So I'll just take another day to just get prepared, maybe troubleshoot, solidify my goals. And then my official first day will be January 2nd. And this went on for I don't know how long. And eventually I just released the goal of no binges because it was impossible every time I tried. So this was how I used to approach it. And I think this is how a lot of people still approach their goals, is very cerebrally. And we think that the better our spreadsheet is, or the better our plan is, the more successful we'll be. Well, I was the queen of spreadsheets and binders and lists and organization. And somehow my binges, not only were they not getting better, but they were getting worse. And I know that a lot of people experience the same thing. So this alone is really proof that more organization and a better plan doesn't necessarily lead to the action. So I want to share what I do now, which is more in alignment. And I've been doing this for years now. I do this every year. And often I do this multiple times a year just to recalibrate and to just make sure I'm still aligned. And I want to give you two exercises. One is the one that I do every single year. That's the one that I'll give you first. This has transformed how I've shown up in my life. The second exercise I want to give you, I actually saw elsewhere. I didn't see an originator of this idea, but I think it's a great, very similar exercise that you can do. So I'm going to give you both. So here's what I do. First, I call this and excuse me if it sounds morbid, but I call this my deathbed exercise. And one of the ways that I really connect with what's most important to me, and I'll explain how this helps you take more aligned action with your goal as well. But the way I connect with what's most important to me is I'll imagine myself, not necessarily on my deathbed, but I will imagine myself towards the very, very end of my life. I will imagine myself as an elderly person reaching the end of my life and looking back on how I lived my life. And at that point, I'll ask myself, what do I regret? Or what do I wish that I had done differently? And at that point, I'll just sit with that question. And usually for me, something will come up really quick. And back when I was struggling with food so much, what really came up for me was, I wish I didn't spend so much of my life obsessing over food. I wish I was more present. I wish I was kinder to myself. I wish I was on my own side in this life and that I didn't beat myself so much. I wish I didn't spend all this time preoccupied with food because I missed what it means to be connected with myself, to be connected with the highest version of myself, to have a healthy and positive relationship with myself where I'm encouraging myself throughout my life. So this is the exercise that I do. And what that allows me to do is understand what my North Star really is. And then throughout the year, anytime I make a decision or set a more mini goal, I ensure that it's not only aligned with my North Star, but the way that I get to it, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, the way that I get to it is actually aligned in such a way where I am getting closer. So this exercise alone will start to transform how you show up in life. I wanted to also give you another exercise. This is similar. So it's really simple. You do 2 steps. Number 1, you write down your top 10 priorities or goals for your new year, or if it's not the new year, just your top 10 goals. You make that list of 10, and then you look at it. And then step 2 is to ask yourself, if one of these goals could be fulfilled within the next 24 hours, which one would make the most significant difference in my life? I'll repeat that. You look at the list of 10 and you ask yourself, if one of these goals could be fulfilled in the next 24 hours, which would make the most significant difference in my life? And that is your North Star. That is your focus. And usually, just like the deathbed exercise, this will cut through all the shoulds. Oh, I should do this because it's good for me. Oh, I should do this because that's what Carol down the street is doing. Oh, I should do this because my partner wants me to do it. I'm not minimizing those things, but I am emphasizing the importance of when you follow your true North Star like that, the actions that you take in your life will start to transform. Now, with these 2 exercises, of course, when you get clear on your North Star, this alone will start to transform how you show up in life. But also naturally, the next step is taking action, and not just any action, but the correct action. So, for example, when I was first binge eating and really wanting to not binge, I was taking a lot of action, but it was the wrong action. In other words, I was making spreadsheets, setting food rules, planning diets, even seeing how this was never working because I was the kind of person, still am, who doesn't give up on things. If I failed that and I fell off the wagon, I would just say, okay, well, next time I'll be stricter or I'll try harder. But it took me a fair amount of time before I recognized that even though my persistence was good and my determination was good, my strategy was off. So I was like using up all of my determination and all of my willpower for a strategy that was never going to get me where I wanted to go, because I didn't know back then that restriction is the number 1 fuel for binges. So I didn't know that with every time I was setting myself up with food rules and getting stricter and stricter with it, I was setting myself up for bigger and bigger binges. And the New Year's Eve was the proof. I set myself a huge goal to not binge for a whole year. And immediately I had a huge binge to compensate for that huge restriction that I was predicting would happen tomorrow. And even though it didn't, I kept repeating that cycle again and again. So yes, the next step is action, but this is why I'm saying right action. Once I realized that the correct answer for me was to really transform my whole relationship with food, how I thought about it, how I felt about it at a deeper level, like a nervous system level, my automatic response is I needed to start rewiring these around food. So that way I wasn't the kind of person who would need to use willpower to say no to a cookie. I could be the person who could take or leave a cookie. That's the kind of person I wanted to be. That's when I started looking into, okay, what's different about normal eaters versus me? And I would see, well, normal eaters, they're not using willpower. They're not setting these food goals. This seems to be effortless for them. So then I started asking myself, well, how can I create that effortless? This is the process that I went through. And this is the process that I now have been teaching for quite a long time. And we've seen so much success with this, even with people who have been struggling for multiple decades with binge eating. And the more we are connected to that North Star, and we're not just relying on hope and prayer is good. I am a hoper, I am a prayer, but they aren't the whole story. Right action means these actions that are consistently aligned with your North Star. And usually for bigger problems like binge eating, or for example, this year for me, I've been dealing with some chronic neck pain. And when I did these exercises, I saw that having this neck pain is affecting everything that I do. I'm still functioning, right? And it's not to say that when we have a problem, every part of our life completely crumbles. But I know that if I didn't have neck pain, I would show up differently in every single area of my life. So when I did these 2 exercises, it was glaringly obvious to me that if I could release this neck pain, then my whole life would be transformed. Now, if I were less sophisticated in my thinking than I used to be, I would just say, my goal by the end of the year is to have no neck pain. Can I really control that? Probably not. What I can control is the consistent actions that I take, the right actions to support the health of my neck and the health of my body as a whole, because of course my neck is connected to everything else. So if I prioritize my health and strength building and maybe physical therapy, usually with a big problem, it means that we need to hire some kind of expert. So maybe there's a specialist connected to my neck that I decide I want to see regularly, and not just see the specialist, but also have my own aligned actions that I'm taking every day that maybe my specialist can prescribe to me, So usually with bigger problems like binge eating or chronic pain or things like that, we want to invest in ourselves in a more committed way. This is not only important for actually getting the result, because we want to set ourselves up for success, but it's also important for simply reinforcing your commitment to yourself. Just taking the action of investing in your health, whether it's financially, energetically, time-wise, the more you're reinforcing your commitment to yourself, you're showing yourself, this is a priority for me. Because many of us will say, and you can see it with people all around you, they'll say, oh yeah, my health is a huge priority. But then you look at their actions and you're like, is it? There's a disconnect a lot of times for a lot of us where we'll say that something is important, and it is. I'm not minimizing that. What I'm saying is our priorities in action may not align with what we're saying is important to us. So it's important to not just take the action, but to take the right action. Now, one thing here that I want to say, I used to view this as something negative. Like if I need to pay for help or if I can't figure something out on my own, then that just means I'm weak. I would just keep sticking it out and trying to figure it out myself and not getting the help because I didn't want to feel like I had failed. But at a certain point, I realized 2 things. Number 1, I had to look at the opportunity cost of that, the hidden cost of that. It was costing me so much time, so much anguish, money. It was costing me my health. And was me just figuring it out on my own worth that cost? at a certain point, I had to say no. And then number two, I realized if I looked at examples of all of the most successful people around me or who I had heard about or read about, I saw that all of them had their own mentors and processes for investing in their growth and their evolution regularly, no matter what the area of life was. If they wanted to improve their marriage or relationship, they would have mentors, coaches in that field. For people who wanted to improve their financial situation, mentors, coaches in that field. Any field you look at, if you look at the most successful people, they all have a support system around them. So I realized that if I wanted to grow out of a pattern or grow into a newer version of myself, it was my duty to invest in myself if I wanted success. So once you have your North Star, this will transform the types of actions that you're guided to. And then following through the right actions with the right attitude and showing up with the attitude of consistency rather than being all or nothing about it. The all or nothing, and I could talk about this for a whole episode. The all or nothing mentality kills progress faster than anything. So if you show up with the attitude of consistency, keeping your North Star in mind, this combination of things will change your life. So before I go, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm coming out with a new program in the new year called Feel the Shift. Do you hear me talk about rewiring your nervous system so your internal reaction to food changes? In other words, if you see a cookie or you eat a cookie, something is triggered in you unconsciously that causes you to feel out of control while continuing to eat all of the cookies, even if you've told yourself, I'm only going to have one. There's a series of teeny tiny subconscious reactions that happen in between you eating the first cookie, which you said, I'll let myself eat that, and then eating the rest of the cookies, which you told yourself, I'm not going to eat them. What Feel the Shift is to help you shift the internal reactions. Now, most of us will just try to enforce more willpower and more rules. We'll say, okay, starting tomorrow, I'm not going to let myself have any cookies since clearly I can't be trusted with one. And does that work either? Obviously not. If that worked, none of us, I would not have created this podcast. So what Feel the Shift is, it's a foundational 10-day program where I take you through the practical and very precise techniques that I use with my private clients to help them overcome this internal reaction and start to retrain their automatic responses to food. So you've probably heard, especially if you've listened to podcasts with my clients, sharing how they never thought that they would be the person who would forget that cookies were even in the house. Or they would forget, I totally forgot I had ice cream in the freezer. And then even when they see the ice cream, they're like, I'm not in the mood for it now. Whereas historically, they didn't even think they'd ever be able to allow ice cream into the house without eating it all at once. They wouldn't even let their partner bring ice cream into the house because they felt they couldn't be trusted. So this kind of transformation is not done through strict rules or willpower. If those worked, they would have worked. It's not done by diets. This kind of transformation happens when we shift what's going on within us, when we make the internal changes and then they start to affect our outer behaviors. So that's how my clients get to the place where they can have ice cream or chips or whatever food in the house and they're not triggered by them anymore. And what does this mean, bigger picture? When you can go to a social event and food isn't consuming all of your thoughts about this event, like what food's going to be there? Should I eat when I'm there? Should I eat before I go? Oh no, I'm there and they have the cake and I really want to have the cake. Maybe I shouldn't. Oh, I didn't eat. Should I binge when I get home? Are other people going to be awake? Maybe I should binge once they go to sleep, right? All of these thoughts are wildly consuming your life. Even if you're a high functioning person, there's this dark cloud that's looming. This is why we're setting goals to release this pattern. So what Feel the Shift will do is it will give you the first most critical steps that I teach every single one of my private clients starting on day one in a very structured and practical way. So if you are the kind of person who you love structure, if someone gives you step by step, you love that because you're really good at following steps. I will give you all of the practical steps to use with any meal that you eat, with before binges, during binges, after binges, with any trigger food, and so much more. So I definitely encourage you to go to my website and read more about Feel the Shift. You can go to katiepapo.com/programs, and you'll see the very first program listed is Feel the Shift. katiepapo.com/programs. Now, one more thing though, if you're listening to this live, I'm offering a very special one-time bonus that can save you literally months or even, I'm not kidding, years of trial and error. It's a super valuable bonus, maybe one of the biggest bonuses I've ever given for any program. And this bonus is, I won't take more time to explain, but if you go to my website and you'll read, this bonus is only available until January 10th. So go to katiepapo.com/programs and make sure that you register before January 10th. This program and this bonus together can start your new year off on a completely different trajectory than what you've ever experienced with food. So if your North Star this year is releasing the self-destructive and self-sabotaging patterns that you've had around food because you really want to connect with yourself in a deeper way, have more peace and ease in your life and around food, I highly recommend you go into your new year in a nice, relaxed way, knowing that you are going to build something truly sustainable for yourself that doesn't just force you to try to follow a certain diet or exercise all of your willpower constantly, but instead you'll very gently start to retrain your automatic responses to food at the core level and therefore have a completely different, much more peaceful relationship with food. So go to katiepapo.com/program, click Feel the Shift, and I really look forward to supporting you starting January 10th. All right, my friends, I will see you next week. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for spending time with me today. If you're ready to take the next step in your journey, become a food freedom insider at katiepapo.com/resources. You'll get free practical guidance and instant access to my foundations class. That's katiepapo.com/resources. New podcast episodes come out every week, so subscribe to the podcast now. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to leave a kind review. It's very meaningful to me, and it helps other people find freedom too. I appreciate you so much, and I hope to help you further on your journey. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and others. See you next week.